This episode of The Rookie Hunter is sponsored by North Arm Knives. North Arm Knives are handcrafted and sold directly through a father and son team right here in British Columbia. Choose from a selection of outdoor knives, kitchen knives, and their brand new folding knife from northarmknives.com. They ship internationally and guarantee all their work. Callie and I use their products and give them our stamp of approval. Go to northarmknives.com. Hey guys, welcome to episode 57 of Rookie Hunter. Today on the show we've got Ben O'Brien. There's only a few podcasts that make it into constant rotation on my phone, and the Hunting Collective is one that I look forward to each week. If you haven't checked out the show, make sure you subscribe to it. Ben is the host and creator of it. You might know Ben from Meat Eater, YETI, or perhaps you heard him on the Joe Rogan Experience. He's a guy that's definitely out there and active in the hunting community, and he's got a great message through his podcast and his approach to hunting in general. So we really enjoyed this conversation and hope you guys do too. If you want to support the show, the best way to do it is head over to the website, which is therookieHunter.com. From there, it's almost t-shirt season. Get yourself a tee. That's the best way to contribute and help us keep this thing going. Check out guest bios and make sure you follow us on Instagram. We're pretty active on there. Our beer pairing for this episode, we're going to give Ben the honors of naming that, which was he called it a dad beer, and that was Corona. So that's a pretty accessible beer. So you guys know what to do. Sit back, relax, crack a cold beer, and enjoy episode 57 with Ben O'Brien. Kelly,
what's happening?
Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been about 12 hours.
Yeah. And we're back from Kamloops. This is going to be spread a week apart, but the episode we did with Chris Barker and Gray Thornton would have been prior to this, but we actually recorded that yesterday, so
yeah,
time travel.
Busy weekend.
Yeah, it's been good.
We lost an hour on our daylight savings time. I realized as I started heading down here, I realized I was late. But yeah, that seems to happen every once in a while.
A couple of times a year.
Yeah. Weren't we talking about scrapping that as a province?
I think we should. It's like every single time the time changes, it always seems to be a debate.
Yeah.
I like this time, like it sucks changing to it because you'll lose the hour. But
there's
I like
more
light in the evening works for me. I don't care if it's darker in the morning.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'd rather have, I don't know. It's a weird thing. We're not farmers. I think that's the reason for it. So yeah, strange that we're still doing this, but
yeah, it's just like there's always somebody that's going to get screwed on that day.
Yeah, always a few.
Yeah.
Oh, at least
it usually doesn't happen nowadays because your computers and your phones change automatically.
Yeah.
But every other clock, like Brie has so many clocks in the house, so I usually rely on the ones that are just like on the wall as decorative, and none of those change over. Nice,
the old analog clock.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's give them a jingle. There we go. That's in the headphones.
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good, man. What's going on?
Not too much.
I'm getting ready to crack a beer, so.
Perfect. What do you
idea.
See if you got the stuff.
Yeah, what do you got on hand there for a brewski?
I'm a dad now, so I'm drinking Corona.
Oh, nice.
I don't want anything too high test for bedtime.
Perfect, man. So you're at home in Texas then?
Yeah.
Nice.
For once in life.
That's good. You survived the show circuit?
I would say survived. Yeah, you could say that. Yep. That's about all. I don't know that I excelled, but I did not die.
Perfect.
Nice. How many shows do you hit?
What did we do this year? About 7 or 8 of them, like that. Oh, and they're all, just how we like to torture ourselves in the hunting industry. They're all within a month and a half's time. So I think I was in 7 cities in 7 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
Wow. And it probably all just blurs into one experience, eh?
Absolutely. I'm pushing for a Yeti. I'm pushing for a Yeti tour bus next year.
Hey, that's not a bad idea.
We'll see if I get one. I doubt it.
Hey, so we usually we like to work in reverse a little bit and start with a bit of your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get introduced into hunting?
Well, I grew up in Maryland, which I feel like it maybe is a little bit unique in the hunting world. Usually it's somewhere out west, or I don't hear a lot of East Coast in my travels. But yeah, I grew up in Western Maryland, which by way of the map is basically East West Virginia. It's right in the little finger of Maryland that connects PA and West Virginia, or at least separates the two. And yeah, I grew up in a pretty rural town called Hagerstown, Maryland. Probably about 20,000 people. And pretty redneck upbringing. Hunting deer on public land and geese and turkeys and all that. That was, I think I started when I was around 12 years old with my dad and a good mentor of mine that was a neighbor. So they gave me a Savage 110 and 243 when I was 12 years old. I remember I was able to hold it, but not all that well.
Right.
So it took me a year or two before I shot a deer. But,
right.
That was the beginning. Pretty redneck all the way around.
Nice. So you kind of got, I guess, what you would call the traditional introduction into hunting through the old man.
Yeah, you could call that.
Yeah.
Yeah. My old man kind of, I think a lot of folks at that time, this would have been mid 90s, early 90s. A lot of folks at that time were like my dad. I mean, he grew up hunting a lot of small game and some deer. And then when his two kids came along, my brother and I, he quit hunting for a long time.
Right.
It was just working and trying to make ends meet, and got away from it until I picked it up, just by, I guess, general osmosis.
Yeah.
Or, I remember writing poems about hunting when I was, 5 or 6 or 7 years old. They didn't make any sense, but nonetheless, they were there. So yeah, and it was pretty traditional that way. I mean,
right.
I hunted with my dad, just my dad, until I was probably 15. He let me sit on my own, but he'd be about 100 yards away, and then from there on. But it was mostly white-tailed deer, mostly with a rifle, and then once I got in my more formative years, I picked up a bow and started hunting geese and turkeys with a shotgun, and off it went.
I guess kind of jumping ahead a little bit, you got into sort of sports journalism at one point. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
How'd you land there?
I always wanted to be a writer, for sure. And besides hunting, my house was just eaten up with sports.
Okay.
That was all. When I was a kid, I would listen to the Baltimore Orioles baseball games on the radio to go to sleep. I was that into baseball and football as well. And so that was kind of the tie that binded our family. Growing up with sports, my grandparents were all in the sports, and it's something we all did as a family. So it was kind of hunting and sports being the number one. So when I grew up wanting to be a writer, I kind of fantasized about being, that baseball beat writer that got to travel around and hang with the celebs and
right,
and get all the trappings of being a professional athlete.
And how did that work out?
That was terrible.
Is that right?
It was terrible. Yeah, I mean, when I was, I'd say I was 20, maybe 21. I think I was 20. I was a junior or senior in college, and I got an internship with a small newspaper, a newsstand newspaper called Press Box in Baltimore, Maryland. And I would drive an hour down there twice a week to do this internship, which is essentially just editing copy and getting people coffee, things like that. And pretty soon after I joined that team, they let go a good number of their editors, and the publisher came to me as a 20-year-old kid and said, "Hey, do you want to be our beat writer for the Baltimore Orioles for a summer?" I was 20 years old now, and I don't know that I said anything to him other than shook my head and tried not to giggle.
Right.
So yeah, then next thing you know, I'm 20 years old. I'm in the locker room interviewing guys I had idolized and getting to know them and going on the field. I remember being on the field at Camden Yards in Baltimore. My dad cried the first time he saw me on the field. He doesn't like that story. But but yeah, so I did that for about a year, and I realized that a year into it, really into my second season doing it, that it was not all it was cracked up to be. You kind of got all the negatives that the professional baseball players had, which were travel, long days, longer nights, really just a hectic job and schedule, not being able to see your family or friends very much. But the reporter really never got to do, as a reporter, I never got to do anything other than write about what other people were doing. And some of those people turned out to be not so good characters.
Interesting.
Which was kind of ruining my baseball fandom in a way.
Oh no.
And so I just decided that kind of wasn't for me pretty quickly into it, and that was depressing. But luckily I stumbled into the fact that you could hunt and write about it.
Right.
Which was a novel idea at the time.
So is that where you transitioned to Petersen's hunting then, or?
No, actually, I had a buddy that was working at the NRA, the National Rifle Association, for their hunting publication, American Hunter magazine, and was hanging out with him in a bar in his hometown. And he said, "Hey, I'm leaving this job. You should apply for it." Remember at the time being shocked that you could. He was showing me pictures of all the hunts he had done and all the stories he had written, and I realized that was a career. So I chased it pretty hard after that. I didn't get his job that I applied for, but they called me back a couple weeks later, and I got another job on the American Hunter staff. And so I believe I was hired when I was 22. I was the associate digital editor for American Hunter. It was my first gig in the hunting industry. Yeah,
the world works in mysterious ways, but it sounds like it all worked out.
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good, I would say. That was, and then I remember like a year into that, I went on a Wyoming antelope hunt. It was the first time I'd traveled out west to go hunting.
Yeah.
And that set the hook pretty good once I got to go do that for my job.
Yeah, you kind of got to work with all the top-end athletes on the baseball side, and then you switch over, and now you're working with the top-end athletes on the hunting side.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a podcast going now, the Hunting Collective. When you talk, and we talk to a lot of folks too, but when you actually get to hang out with these guys and go on some hunts with them, is there anything you can take from those guys, like a commonality that kind of shows how successful or why they're that successful out in the field? They're great hunters.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. There's just a singular, and there's two things I find, and we talk about this a lot, and the marketing circle, how you identify those personalities and what the fruits bear. But I think they, both professional athletes and folks that hunt essentially for a living, there's just a singular mindset that there's two things. One, there's like a seminal sacrifice in their life. There's like a time where they just decided that this is going to be their life, and they're not going to take no for an answer.
Right.
And they're going to be the best. They're going to be the best at it. And once they've decided that, then it's this singular focus on that idea that I think carries over. I mean, guys like Remy Warren or Adam Greentree, they all come to it in a different way, and they all get there. Yeah, maybe some of them get there when they're a little bit older. Some of them start when they're younger, but they all kind of get to that point. Remy, I think, started when he was 10 or 12 years old, thinking he was going to be a hunting guide or a professional hunter. And Greentree didn't get there until he was 40 or so. Well, he's 40 now. But he didn't get there until just recently when he was in his 30s. And so they all kind of find different paths to that idea, but I think the commonalities, they all arrive at this idea that that's going to be what they're going to do. And they're just uniquely skilled, one, and two, they just don't take no for an answer from the world.
Ben, so you're in Texas. How long have you been there for now?
Oh, this is my 3-year anniversary here last month. So three solid years here with YETI.
So that was the main reason for heading out there, was to be with YETI? Yeah,
that was the only reason.
Okay.
I'd never been here before.
Yeah.
I'd been to Texas, but never been to Austin before my wife and I. My wife and I got in the truck and drove down here with a trailer full of ammo, guns, and taxidermy.
Perfect.
That happened to be the three things that the moving company would refuse to take. So I rolled down here with a whole trailer full of pretty manly items, I figured at the time.
That's hilarious. So in that 3 years, have you spent much time hunting in Texas then, or?
Yeah, I spent a more time. Well, not more time. I've hunted around a good fair amount, but yeah, the founders of YETI actually have a large piece of property right on the border, near Eagle Pass, Texas. And I've hunted, so I have the privilege to go down there now and again. And then I have some access to leases around Austin, and then the occasional axis deer hunt or nilgai hunt or hog hunt around the state. So yeah, I think I would say in my 3 years I've done pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about. It's from what I understand, there's not a whole lot of public land in Texas. So is it basically just who you know kind of thing and lining all that up? We're in the land of public land up here in BC. We can pretty much go anywhere we want. So that concept is a bit foreign to us.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you guys don't want to turn into.
Right.
Mm-hmm. This is other than the Midwest, Midwestern United States, Illinois and Iowa, states like that are mostly farmland.
Yeah.
Which means they're mostly private land. Other than that, Texas is really kind of the North Star for the privatization of land. I mean, I think it's 98% of the land in Texas, and it's a big state. I mean, 98% of the land is privately held in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And so there just isn't. When you grow up here, you don't. If you're in a lower class, or if you're middle class even, or you just don't have access to larger ranches or big pieces of property, you just can't hunt. I mean, there isn't any really place to do it. I mean, a lot of these guys will cobble together as much money as they can to get on a 100 to 200 acre lease or something like that, and set up a feeder and a ground blind. I mean, that's fairly common here. So it's just a different mentality. I mean, the folks I know that grow up in Texas think differently about hunting and the natural world, and they just kind of see it more as a private money making equity firm than it is how you guys see it. It's a place that you can go and explore. I mean, 'cause that just doesn't happen here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've kind of discussed the idea of the hunting narrative quite a bit on a lot of our podcasts, and we kind of come into the realization that the hunting narrative could be different in different areas. Africa, Texas, eastern states, BC, all kind of has a different feel to it and kind of different reasons why it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it all does. Yeah, absolutely. We're lucky. I mean, we're just lucky enough to have the North American model of wildlife conservation, fancy name for just how we treat animals in this country, wild animals specifically. And I think if you look at the North American model and then you look at Texas decided not to listen to that model here some years ago. They just kind of went a far left of center when it comes to the wildlife policies here and the lack of land. And I mean, when you think, a lot of Americans think about Texas, you think about oil and gas, you think about extraction. You don't think about large tracts of land to explore and to recreate and to go spend time. So, I mean, it really is just from state to state, really a different mindset. And I think that's why the public lands in this country have been so centralized in the Western mindset. And once you cross the Mississippi, especially down here, there's just a different way of thinking about wildlife. White-tailed deer are, predominantly hunted on leases and private property and private land, and in the eastern United States and the Midwestern United States and here in Texas. So just even species by species, I think they're thought of differently.
Mm-hmm.
Is there certain states that you try and hit up every year or every couple of years?
Yeah, I definitely, there's places that I've been that I think just lend themselves to a more enjoyable hunting. And really, I'm trying to find places around the world specifically that are more open to hunting. Places like British Columbia for sure is one of them. If I had to say my top 3 destinations in the world, I would say New Zealand, British Columbia, and I'd probably put Hawaii in with that as well.
Right.
Just because New Zealand, there's so much public land there. There's no tag system.
Right.
There's no season. And so, yeah, they don't have a great diversity of native. They don't have any native game species, and they don't really have a great diversity of ungulates or anything like that. But they do have, accessibility. If you're willing to take a 12-hour plane ride, you can hunt some of the best country in the world for basically nothing.
They've got some big rainbow trout there, don't they?
Yeah, they've got some great fishing.
Yeah,
great fishing. Great. I mean, the people are some of the nicest people in the world, and the scenery is unparalleled, and the game lives really high in places that are tough to get to, which speaks to my general nature. And it's that experience, the experience of going there and knowing that there's a place like that in the world that is basically free and open to anyone that wants to hunt it at any time. I just think that's unique enough to jump on the plane and ride along with.
Yeah, definitely. New Zealand's been calling me for a couple of years now. I think it's going to happen at some point. Have you been there a few times, or?
Yeah, I've been there 3 times now, and it gets better every time, to be honest. I mean, I think the folks that go there and the natives there would probably not like me saying in public that there's a lot of public ground. It costs $0 to access it.
Right.
It has public huts and bivvies that you can sleep in.
Right.
That cost $0. You'll just sign your name to a ledger, and it's yours for as long as you want to stay.
Wow.
And yeah, these are well kept public buildings that have cut firewood in them and stoves and working. I mean, it's just, these are beautiful cabins in the middle of public ground. So you're talking about no tags, no seasons, public housing for $0. So if you can catch a flight over there and rent a car, you're pretty well set to stumble around and see what you can come up with.
So can you just do your own hunt, or do you have to have a guide come with you? How does that work?
Yeah, no guide required.
Uh-huh.
There is, in the past, I mean, I've had a guide most of the times I've gone there, but after having gone there a couple of years, if you take it, and I think if I know now that if you take your time and plan it, and you have a local to kind of guide you into an area where that's accessible by foot, a lot of it over there is helicopter. So if you want to save some money up and get a helicopter to drop you in a certain area, that's either not accessible by foot or would just take way too long to get to.
Right. That's
also an option. And so I've done kind of both. But in the last couple of years, we've hunted a piece of public there that you can drive through this riverbed and this vast valley. I mean, it's got this beechwood forest on the bottom, and then it breaks into some tussock grasses and the subalpine, and then breaks into this like shale rock alpine cliffs where the tar and chamois hang out. And I mean, it's the most beautiful place you'll ever see. So there's some glacial outcroppings, and it's
sounds amazing.
It's amazing, and you can literally drive down this riverbed, or hike down this riverbed, find a public hut, find a trail system map, and go. And whatever animal you see, you have the chance to take out with you if you can get it done.
Right.
Pretty, bow, rifle, whatever, doesn't matter.
Remy's got an outfit or something set up there, doesn't he?
He had in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he's doing it. I don't think he's doing it anymore. Just because of time, I'm sure. But
yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I don't. He's the first person who showed me where the areas are, and he's probably got his hackles up if he listens to this, because he'll be like, O'Brien, do not give my spots up, you bastard. But he showed me his favorite spot the first time him and I went down there together. Wow. And that's been the spot that I've most coveted.
Awesome.
But yeah, all you really need is somebody like Remy, or somebody that you know, and they're friendly down there, so it wouldn't be hard to find someone,
right,
just to kind of guide you into the right situation. And I think if you hunted the mountains in BC, you can certainly handle it in New Zealand.
For sure. Yeah, we talked to Mike Hawkridge a couple months back, I guess now. And we were asking him about the hunt with Joe Rogan, and didn't realize you were on that hunt as well. And it sounds like everybody who was involved in that moose hunt was just like one of the most amazing experiences all around. Anything you want to share about that trip up there?
Oh man, we could do a couple hours on that one.
I bet.
That was kind of the trip I organized, because I knew I had talked to Joe for a previous article, so I was editor of Petersen's Hunting, second in command editor over there at the time. And I had talked to Joe about an article we did a year prior that was called the Meat Eater edition of Petersen's Hunting. It had a giant piece of bloody red meat on it,
right,
on the end of a knife. It was fairly popular, that one. It got nominated for a couple awards, and it was a little bit of a controversial image that we ran. And I wrote the cover article. And in writing that article, Steven Ranella, who was featured in it, pushed me over to Rogan because they had just gotten back from their first hunt together.
Okay.
I think in, I can't remember where they went, Missouri Breaks, I believe it was.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first time Rogan had hunted, and this was maybe a couple weeks after they got back.
Oh.
And so he said, just call Joe Rogan. And I was like, what? The Fear Factor guy? What are you talking about? You really call that guy? And he said, yeah, give him a call. So I called Joe, and we ended up talking for like an hour about wolves, mostly just about wolves.
That doesn't surprise me, yeah.
I don't know why. Yeah, it's his nature. And so that we were thinking about, well, who's going to be on the cover of the next Meat Eater edition? Because we wanted to kind of make it a thing at the time, make it an annual deal. And by the time that idea came around, I said, well, what about Joe Rogan? I think we should do a cover with him. And started to talk to Joe. He was, of course, into the idea. And he said just whatever. At the time, he was solely hunting for meat. So he said, whatever animal I can get the most meat off of. So, okay, that sounds good. So I called up a buddy of mine who knew Hawkridge pretty good, and I got connected with Mike and set up a hunt. And pretty soon after that, we were all sitting at Hawkridge's place. We were drinking some kind of terrible rum, Canadian rub that you got over there. Getting ready to go hunt. Yeah, and that hunt, I've never, I didn't know Joe for anybody other than those two conversations.
Right.
At that point. And you never know with guys who are celebrities. So, but I don't think I ever laughed as much in my life in the week we spent riding around out there glassing cut blocks for moose. It was unbelievably fun. To the point where I think we forgot to look for moose for half the time.
Right.
So yeah, he ended up shooting a small bull, and then we went and cut that up and got it back and did the photo shoot. And then he was, Joe was giving me crap the entire photo shoot because he wanted to get back in the truck and go after a bull for me because we only had a day left. So yeah, we jumped back in the truck, and little did we park the thing and get out, and there was two moose running across the cut block, and we gave chase, and I shot with the bigger one of the two.
Wow.
Which yeah, I'm looking at right now, hanging on my wall.
Oh, very cool.
So,
it sounds like you guys got kind of lucky just based on the time being November. Mike was saying he was kind of worried about, the opportunities that you guys would have there, but it sounds like he knows what he's doing and where to find them.
Yeah, I mean, you know how that goes. It's just persistence.
Yeah.
And I think that was my first moose hunt. I had done a bunch of other hunting in BC and Alberta before that. But I think for me, the stress was around the content and
right.
making sure Joe had a good experience just because, new hunters, and somebody with Joe's influence. And before I knew him, it was very stressful to go be in camp and be around him because you just don't know.
Yeah.
And I know with new hunters, you always want to give them the right prism in which to see this thing.
Right.
And so Mike did a great job. It was not the time of year to be up there. The weather, I believe we had some snow and sleet on the first day, and then it got warm, and then it would get cold again. So the weather was kind of all out of whack.
Right.
And we'd see a moose or two each day, really humping hard, classing hard. So, but I mean, at the time, it's one of the greatest examples of a hunt that I've been on where it was just about the people you were with and the
right.
laughs you were having and just connection with the people in camp. And we had a photographer, Sam Soholt, was up there with us at the time. And it was the first time I'd hunted with Sam. So it was kind of all these disparate people coming together that didn't know each other. But by
right.
the time the thing was over, we were friends for life. So that's a good example of.
We've talked about that before, just like what, there's people you could work with in an office every single day for years and years on end and never really have a connection with them, but you go hunt with somebody for a week and you're definitely connected and friends for life after something like that. So there's definitely something about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's, what are you really experiencing in the office?
Yeah.
Some forced interaction, like some, some very dry, forced interaction that feels, if it was the color, it'd be gray. And if you get out in the world with somebody and experience those highs and lows, what it feels like to struggle and to succeed and all that, I mean, there's no way, you'd be hard pressed to muffle that emotion and make it not turn into something special.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
In this case, you just had just a confluence of a bunch of people coming together and having a good time. And so, when I talk about that hunt, most often I don't talk about the size of moose that I killed or where we were even, just talk about Mike and Joe and Sam and all that rum we drank after it was all done. What it looked like.
Yeah. It's a good transition there, because one of the things I wanted to ask you is, you obviously get, opportunities to take guys out for the first time. What do you enjoy most about, showing someone that experience, and what do you try and pass on to them?
Yeah, at first I thought you were going to ask me a rum question.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been wanting to ask you about rum. No. Man, that's a complicated one.
Yeah.
But the most enjoyable one for me lately, I mean, I've got a son here. He may come bursting in the room. You may hear him in the background.
Yeah.
He's a year and a half old, and so we've got some time left before he really gets out there with me. But being in my position, really at YETI, really, but just in the industry, when people find out that you kind of hunt for a living, or at least you're in that world, it opens up all these questions and emotions, and like some people get angry, some people are curious. Most people I find are curious.
Yeah.
And it's the best part about it, I found, is turning that curiosity into this weird reality that a lot of them never thought they would get to experience. And I did. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the website The Chives. If you are, you'll probably laugh if you are. Not known as a hunting website per se.
No.
I would guess. But they contacted me and said, "Hey, we'd like to do a video with you, with this young lady that's a chivette, as it were, and we'd like you to take her hunting. We want to document it, and we want to do it the right way." I was a little hesitant at first because I wasn't sure what the angle was. But
right.
Once I figured out that they were sincere, I jumped right in, and we took her down South Texas for a javelina hunt, and really we're only there for about 12 hours. Shot her first rifle, got her comfortable with that, took her out, and 2 hours later she shot a javelina.
Wow.
Helped me gut it, helped me skin it, helped me quarter it, and
awesome.
butcher it, and we ate it that night. So that, and that young lady cried probably at every turn of all those experiences, probably cried 6 or 7 times throughout all that. And then at the end of it said to me, which would be pretty memorable for me, was just like, "Hey, this is top 5 day of my entire life."
Wow.
A 25-year-old person that lives a decidedly urban life, and she did something so out of her comfort zone that it just stuck with her. And for guys like us who are hunters, that's like microwave hunting. That's just a short trip down to the ranch to shoot a javelina real quick. I mean, that's nothing special. But for her, that experience was top 5 in her life. So that's something that I took with me from that experience. Is that you can, if you show people hunting in the right way, there's nothing bad there. It's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if she'd ever do it again, but even if that's the only time she does it, her perspective, I'm sure, has changed in some way for the rest of her life.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine she will never do it again. But if she's at a bar or at a party or something, and somebody says, "Hey, hunting is terrible," she'll be able to speak up and say, "Whoa, wait a minute, let's talk about that." Because before we went, I just told her, I said, "Hey, look, we're going to do it this way. I want you to, read about the natural history of the javelina. I want you to read about what it eats, where it lives, how it hangs out, where you might see it, when it moves, and then take a look at some recipes and how it's cooked. And I said, if you do that and get your hunter safety course and get your license, I'll do the rest." And then really she did all that and did it well. And then I took care of the rest. But I mean, you guys think of all the things that go into hunting once you've been doing it a while, the trophies and the photos and the industry and some things that could turn into negative cues. I mean, I just didn't let her have any of that, didn't show her any of that.
Right.
And she had a great experience. So, not that you would do that with everyone or that the way we hunt is bad once we get, become obsessed with it. But, I think even a father to son, like my dad taught me, he never thought about that. It was just hunting, something he did. There was never any thought to like explain the philosophies behind it or anything like that. It was just something that you did. So you try to take those two differences and turn them into something positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny, man, is like my dad was a hunter, but I never really got into it. And it was sort of just like exactly what you explained. Is hunting was just kind of a thing that he did, and we always had, fresh meat in the freezer and stuff like that. But sometimes I wish that he would have explained to me that that's not, usual for a lot of people, and that we're pretty fortunate to have those opportunities here. But it was sort of just something that was just happened. You know what I mean? It was around me, but it never really clicked until later in life when you start thinking about what you're putting into your body and where things come from, and how the average animal is kept as far as beef and stuff like that. And then when you get your first animal, it all sort of clicks all at once, and it becomes a pretty much a life-changing experience. So that's how it was for Kelly and I, anyways. So,
did you think was your perspective that it was easy, just knowing that your dad was out there and taking animals? And
I don't know. I don't think I thought it was easy. Just it's just didn't really think a whole lot of it. You know what I mean? So it's interesting.
Yeah, it would just be like having a catch. Like there's nothing, you don't think about what having a catch is. That's your dad takes you out to have a catch. It's really fun. It's great time spent together, but we don't spend a lot of time talking about what it all means, which is natural. You just don't. That's just not something fathers and sons do, most of them, in those environments.
Yeah, but yeah, for sure. And kind of where I was leading with that too is, with that girl you took out, it's that storytelling and stuff that gets passed on, and I think that's the best way to inform the general public is about the experience and the stuff that you don't get to see that isn't in the photos, the trophy photos and stuff like that. So there's a whole lot to it that people don't get to see, and it's they're missing out, I think.
Well, it's funny that I always end up talking about how I've stumbled onto this really complex, really oxymoronic, very nuanced pursuit that I love so much that is just sometimes impossible to explain to people that haven't done it. And they're smarter folks than me, because there's a guy named Michael Pollan who wrote this book called The Omnivore's Dilemma, and he was a liberal writer and Pulitzer Prize winner, and just one of the smartest people this country has to offer. And he went pig hunting in California for the first time, just basically out of curiosity. And he said in his book, he just said that hunting looks so much different from the inside than it does from the outside, or something way more fancy than how I just phrased it. But that's basically what he said. I mean, he couldn't understand or explain how different it was inside of hunting, what the culture looked like, how it looked from the outside. And I think that's our challenge, all of our challenge.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. 100%. Ben, congrats on the launch of the Hunting Collective. You
absolutely
came out of the gate swinging there, and we see you hitting the charts up here in the iTunes and all that kind of stuff. So it must be pretty exciting to get that rolling. I know that's something that's been on your plate for a while. So you enjoying it so far?
Yeah, I am. I certainly couldn't do it alone. But yeah, I mean, I think that was exciting. I mean, I remember when I looked at that, it was the first time I had ever looked at the iTunes charts in my life. And I was just scrolling around, not even considering that I would be on there. I was just trying to learn about iTunes, looking around since I was on there now. Yep. And I had to do about a quadruple take to figure out that I was up there in the top 10 or whatever. It was short-lived, but nonetheless, I'd rather be there than not, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I I've always somebody was asking me the other day about that same question. And I just said, I've always wanted to be a storyteller.
Yeah.
And I think every writer, which I just kind of always think of myself as a writer, but any storyteller, content creator, who always struggles to find like the seminal story of their life, or like the one story they were meant to tell, or the one thing that they were so passionate to tell that they poured their career or life into. Sometimes that's in a smaller scale, like just a single story, or on a larger scale. And so, I don't know, I just kind of, in not such a grandiose way, I kind of think with hunting, I've found the story that I want to tell, and a platform that's pretty compelling to tell it. So
right.
I'm happy to be able to do that, and having been around for 10 years in the industry, I kind of have my likes and dislikes about how the marketing world works.
Yep.
How content is sometimes made better by advertising and outside influences, and somehow it's oftentimes made worse by those influences. And so it's nice to have the ability to just have some fresh, clean, untouched content for a time.
Yeah.
And start to tell that story that I'm thinking about all the time. So yeah, I mean, it's without all of the emotion of just putting yourself out there, I think it just is exciting to have it finally going, because I will tell you, flip it back to moose hunting 3 or 4 years ago with Joe Rogan. He told me at the time, he's like, you should podcast, man. Yeah. And I said, I don't even know what that is, Joe. Nobody listens to podcasts. It's 2014. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to start a podcast.
Right.
I wish I had listened to him back then.
Yeah.
Better situation now.
Yeah.
But glad it's going.
For sure. The first episode you did was with Rennell, and you guys were out in the desert. Second one was with Callahan. You guys were sitting in a Tacoma at some convention center. We really like sort of like the in the field type stuff, like that. Just to picture you and Callahan sitting in that truck is pretty hilarious. And then the one you did with Rennell is kind of cool because it gives people a chance to sort of feel like they're part of the hunt. Is that are you going to do more of that style of recording, or?
Yes, as much as I possibly can.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the goal. Hopefully they'll be more frequent than not. But yeah, I mean, I think that was never the intention for either one of those two podcasts. I mean, I knew I wanted to do a podcast with Steve, of course. And we were in Mexico, and we hunted so hard that week. I think the only time I could have calmed him down enough to get an hour out of him would have been while we were glassing in midday.
Right.
When there was nothing moving. And so, that's how that became. And then similar with Ryan, I mean, we talked about doing it in a hotel room or doing it, in some back meeting room somewhere.
Right.
I ended up saying, let's go over this truck, and see what happens. So yeah, I think that was born just out of necessity in those two times.
Right.
That's such good feedback.
Yeah.
I wish I had a better, like more creative story. Like I thought that through. But yeah, both of those times were just such spontaneous podcasts that I think what I find is people, as you said, people want to come along with you on these journeys, whether they're big or small. So yeah, I hope the Hunting Collective can continue to be that, which is this stories from various places, whether it is, on the phone a few times a month, or from a trade show, or from a glass and tit, or from a deer blind, or wherever they can be. I definitely don't want there ever to be a Hunting Collective studio anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, the storytelling is great from a YETI perspective. I find the videos on YouTube, I don't know who's responsible for those, but the editing and everything in those videos, the stories are pretty amazing. And I think you just did a recent one. You went to the Himalayas with Cole Kramer.
Yeah, we did. That was our most recent YETI Presents. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that, like, the story presented in that video is excellent. Everybody ate the meat, and it was all about kind of a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and Cole's crying when he took the shot. So, yeah, you guys do a great job from that perspective.
Yeah, I cried a lot too for different reasons. That's true. Yeah, that I'll remember that one for a lifetime for sure. I was actually just talking to Cole yesterday about the trip. We were texting back and forth and just reflecting and sending photos and just saying how lucky we were to be in this time in our lives where we were able to go and do that under the guise of work, have an experience like that. And I think that really came about. I mean, Cole, of course, I work with Cole at YETI, the YETI ambassador, and Cole and I had just struck up a good relationship. I hunted with him on Kodiak Island 2 years ago in December. We had a great hunt, great adventure, and we were just talking about what's the next thing to do. And he brought up Nepal, and I laughed at him and kind of went about my day. And even, I think maybe even jokingly brought up to our team at YETI, like, hey, we're about to hunt Nepal, haha. No, of course, we'll never do that. But luckily enough for all of us, we had the connection with a guy named Renan Ozturk, who is pretty seminal filmmaker, content creator in the climbing world. He did a acclaimed documentary called Nauru with Jimmy Chen and Conrad Anker about climbing that peak. And he's, climbed Everest many times and adventured around the world and is a Nat Geo filmmaker and works with the North Face as an ambassador and really just a staple of that world, which is, as you guys know, is much different than the hunting world. So the moment that we knew we had a chance to get Renan and get his storytelling mind wrapped around hunting, and especially hunting in the way that we did in the Himalayas, we knew we had to go. So we put that hunt together in about 2 months, and I had about a month to train for 18,000 feet.
Wow.
And off we went.
Nice. Yeah. It was a good experience just watching the video. I can't imagine what it was like to actually be there.
Yeah, I mean, it was intense, I think. Yeah. I think the video does a nice job of I'm glad everyone got to experience Man Bahadur, our main guide, because and really translate his life onto the big screen, because he for sure is one of the more memorable people I've ever met. I mean, he and really all of our porters, which you see in the film, our porters and Sherpas, have a different spirit. As a lot of the more poor caste folks in Nepal have, is this different, enduring spirit that we just don't have in this country. Yeah. On this continent, this side of the world, I mean, we live fairly soft lives, and it's made us soft, for lack of a better term. And there's some hard people over there, and if you let that experience change you, it will certainly change how you think and feel about coming back to America, and the problems that we think are the things that we think are problems really become not so much once you get back. But Man Bahadur didn't have shoes until he was 13 years old, and living in this hut that was really, you would say village, but I would say it was just a collection of mud and stone huts on a terraced hillside and cut into the western Himalayas, and in the middle of nowhere, 6 days walk from the nearest road.
Wow,
and
crazy.
So here was a man who used to make his own muzzleloaders growing up, and he used matchsticks as ignition for his muzzleloaders, and he would tell us that a couple of different times the guns would blow up on his back while he was chasing blue sheep, blow his shirt off, or blow a chunk out of his shoulder, or some craziness like that. And then when he was in his 20s, he was part of the civil war over there, which was the communist forces against the government. And he was conscribed into, I believe, the rebel army. I can't believe it was a rebel army. And he was made to poach sheep and tar and different native game to feed the army. So they basically turned him into a legal poacher.
Wow.
So he went from that to having the job of a hunting guide, and I think even in his village, just having a job is and bringing money back to the village is a huge thing. So,
I bet.
If you think about a guy like Man Bahadur and a guy like Cole Kramer, they couldn't be any more different in their upbringing. But seeing them work on a mountain together, you kind of got the idea that they were basically the same guy at their core.
Right. I'm sure you got a lot of hunts coming up for this year. Any in particular that you're especially looking forward to?
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a good question. I've only just come up for air after trade season, so
yeah,
I've
switch gears.
turkey season.
Okay.
Yeah, switching gears now. The turkey season is kind of the season I like to just hunt for myself, and really it's a great time to be outside. So I'm looking forward to turkey season, but I headed back to Lanai on the Hawaiian island of Lanai here at the end of April with a big crew for YETI. And so that should be a fun one. And then hopefully headed to Australia with Mr. Adam Greentree at some point in May. Try to see how he lives down there and chase around some fallow rooster deer, maybe some red deer while we're there. So yeah, those two are pretty exciting. I find myself with these opportunities that I never thought I'd have, and they come in rapid succession. So
right.
I try to compartmentalize each one as a dream hunt, and make sure I appreciate each one.
For sure. Good. Well, we're running low on time here before we let you go. I think I gave you a heads up. We like to depart with a hunting story. You've already given us a few, but have you got one more for us?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'd like to give you the best one of all. See if I can think of a really good one. I would say when I was a kid, I'll tell you, it's a gruesome one, but a good one nonetheless.
All right.
One of the first times I ever hunted alone, and as we were talking earlier, my dad and I would go to public land in Maryland, and we would hike in probably half a mile or so on this trailhead, and then at the time we were just hunting with muzzle loaders. I had a 50 cal Hawken, I believe, patch and round ball, and we would sit on each side of the trail, and that was my way of hunting alone. I mean, I could see my dad, but at this point, I think I was 14 or 15. He would just go over the other side of the hill and go down the hill from where I was. And for me, not being able to see my dad was pretty important, because now I was hunting alone, for lack of a better term. And so I remember just taking like a little fold-out seat and putting it beside this trail, and sat there for about 3 hours in the morning in the snow, and just freshly snowed until the snow kind of covered the ground completely. And I didn't move. I'm sure I took a nap. There was no cell phones at the time, so I wasn't looking at my phone. And I was just sitting there clutching my 50 cal with my little pouch of round balls and a couple of powder horns ready to shoot a doe. And luckily enough for me, this doe, I remember being really quiet in the afternoon. Sun was starting to come out. And this doe, I think, was probably headed to her bed, and she just came walking down this trail in the snow, about probably 6 inches of snow at that point, came walking down the trail next to me and stopped at about 50 yards. And being the youngster that I was with a big, long 50 cal rifle, I shot her right in the spine and dropped her. And so now here I am. It was pretty windy that day, so I don't know that my dad heard the shot, but now here I am with a spine deer and a patch and round ball muzzleloader. So I'm trying to wet the patch and get the round ball in the right place. I'm shaking like a leaf, and a deer suffering in front of me, and I'm having big trouble. So at some point in all this melee, I drop all my round balls into the snow. And so now I have a wounded deer and no ammunition. I'm searching around in the snow, and I can't find anything. And I'm just all the while kind of freaking out. And just at this time, luckily, another guy that was hunting just over the hill came walking down, and a guy I'd never met before, was dressed in buckskins, and he also had a muzzleloader. So he came walking in and said, "Son, you want me to finish her off?" And I said, "Please." I'm sure at this point I was shaking and looking pretty meek. And he, instead of just shooting the deer, he jumped on the deer, jumped on her back, the redneck that he was, and took out a Bowie knife and almost sawed her head off. So she was screaming, I was screaming, the deer was gurgling, blood was going everywhere in the snow, and I was in complete shock at that point. And he kind of got up, wiped off his knife, and shook my hand, said, "Congratulations, son. Is your dad around?" I said, "He's right over there." About that time, my dad came up over the hill, and this guy walked into the distance.
Wow.
And so that was the first time I ever hunted by myself in my hunting career. So that goes to show you, one, that I was hunting in redneck territory for sure. Dude in buckskins with a Bowie knife was not all that uncommon.
Jeez.
And that is burned into my memory forever as a little dude.
I don't doubt it.
Seeing that. So I don't know if that story's too gruesome for air, but it's one that is burned in my memory just as something that would happen to a young lad that was old enough to pull the trigger, but maybe not old enough to do all the other things.
Right.
So as a way of learning, it was good.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Good. Well, Ben, this was fun, man. I wish we had more time, but maybe we'll have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. That was a full beer's worth of conversation.
Excellent. Awesome. We'll do 2 beers worth next time.
I'm down for that.
Perfect. All right, man. We'll keep in touch. Thanks again for your time.
All right, guys. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks, Ben.
Cheers.
See ya.
There it is, episode 57. Thanks to Ben for joining us on this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Make sure you subscribe to the Hunting Collective. Kelly and I both enjoy that podcast, and we definitely think you guys will too, so add it to the rotation. We'll be back next week with Jeff Lander and Aaron Snyder on the show together. Look forward to that one. As always, make sure to head over to theRookieHunter.com for all things related to the show. See you next week.